and good day, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Let me see, just a second. Let's see here. There we go. I think that's the screen I want to show. Yeah, there we go. Good day. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome, welcome. My name is Tim Jerome. Let me pull up our slide here. There we go. And we're going to talk today about leadership and management. Leadership and management actually has changed a lot as of late 2017 in the project management body of knowledge. You don't see a lot of it being discussed online except in a very small few communities, okay? Now, it's of interest of many of us. Let me turn my camera on here too. This is what's fascinating. The PMBOK has always been about management and leadership, and yet we haven't talked about it. Now we are. This is me. I've been a project manager for many, many years. I've been a consulting project manager. I've had formal training in most of the skills and knowledge areas. I went to undergraduate and graduate school and studied business. Not only got my PMP in teaching it, but also going in and helping multinational corporations solve big, complex problems. So I've seen everything, and I'm a good person to ask questions of. Now, today's discussion is right here. We're going to discuss what leadership and management is so that we can get a baseline. You can't have a conversation unless you have a discussion, right? And then we're going to talk about outside of the PMBOK, what leadership is and what leaders are and what power and authority is. So we're going to have some definitions and context. And the thing I want to remind you of is that as project managers, we're often given a lot of responsibility, but we often don't have the power and authority. So I hope that we can actually have this type of a discussion too as we go through this material. That's the intent. Now, first of all, let's get down to business. Let's talk about what the PMBOK says, and let's talk about what the world says management and leadership are. They're two different things. When I direct, I tell somebody, okay, over here, pick up that box, move it there, and set it down there, right? I'm interested in spreadsheets. I'm interested in how many boxes you move across half an hour. I'm interested in collecting data and analyzing and trying to make things better. Leadership is different. Leadership is working with others through discussion or debate. I like that, in order to guide. So when we talk about leadership, we talk about motivating people, which means giving them a reason to do something better. We also talk about influence, which is creating an environment where good things happen, right? We move things out of the way so good people can do good work. That's what we do. We protect our team and they do great work, okay? Now, we do both, right? We have to get things done in a certain amount of time within budget with certain expectations. And so we have to direct, we have to manage, but we also lead, because a project manager, as you learn, doesn't just look at getting a deliverable complete. It has to meet an objective, which is, what's the problem we're going to solve? Why are we creating this deliverable? So we have to be strong in both of these. Managing is easy. In fact, most of us start off as managers, right? We work with our teams and we learn how to direct them. And it makes sense. For me, I started off as a database expert, right? And I worked my way into an IT director's position. And all of a sudden I stopped doing databases and I started telling people to work on databases, right? I was moving from management and to leadership. Project manager, though, has so many other things going on, they cannot do the work of the technology or the work of creating the deliverable. They have to step back. And so they have to not just manage the work, and any expert can do that. They have to lead the people, and that's the key. Management gets good work done, and leadership helps great people. Together, they have to work. The problem is, in order to be a leader, it takes a while to develop. It takes a lot longer to develop, the ability to work with people than it is to tell people what to do. Now, in order to tell people what to do, we're just going to talk about management right now. You need two things. You need power and you need authority. Authority is easy, right? The legal and formal right to give orders and take decisions. So you go in and you say, I'm the manager. You're going to listen to me. That's authority. Okay, you may be given that. You may not. As a project manager, sometimes I had limited to no authority. I would have a vice president or two on my projects, so I would have to learn how to talk to them in such a way that they recognized me, even though I had a lowly job title. That's tricky, and that's where power comes in. The ability to do something. Now, I chose these two components because they're the definitions of power, but they also reflect the dimensions. The ability to influence and the ability to control actions. The ability to influence, make your will known, right? Make things happen. That's what power is. Control actions. That's what power also is. Now, it's not just control other actions, it's also controlling our own actions. So you can have power when you're managing and leading yourself. Let's keep that in the back of our mind as we go through this material, okay? The ability to have power in leading and managing yourself, not just managing other people. So again, authority is my job title, and it's also my assignment. Tim, you're the project manager. That's authority, right? Power is something that you bring to the table. You may or may not have it. You may be able to create it. It may be given to you. Now, let's get some context on these two comments here. What is it about power and authority that we need to understand? What is it that we need to do to use it? I chose these two people. They could very well be mentors to me. Okay, they're authors. They're over 2,000 years old. They've been gone for a long time, but their words resonate. I chose to call them experts because when I talk about a mentor, it's somebody I look up to, but somebody that I want to be like. And it's somebody I develop a relationship with. Today, Marcus Aurelius, who is one of the 5 greatest emperors of Rome, and Seneca one of the leaders of the Stoic philosophical movement in Greece and Rome, are experts. They're experts in management and leadership and being a human being. Aurelius was a military man, and he wasn't just a great leader. He was a humble leader, and that's what made him great. And I got this quote from his Meditations, which was his journal he kept with him, and he wrote in it every day. One of the most common things he would write is, Marcus, remember these people around you don't have the training, don't have the education, don't have the access to everything you do, and they may not do the right thing. It's your job to help them do the right thing, and if they're not doing the right thing, it's your fault. That's the way he looked, and that's the way he thought of himself as a leader. And that's called a servant leader, right? And he loves this. This is another statement. This is brilliant. Nothing is more pathetic than people who running around never realizing that all you have to do is be attentive to the power inside you and worship it sincerely. He was very big into the concept that you can't control a lot of the things around you, but you can control your response to them. And he talked not about the power of moving a civilization, which he had control of, but he talked about the power of being able to make his will known. Now, his will was interesting. He believed, like most Stoics, that there was a right way to do things and there was a wrong way of doing things, right? And it's like a hammer. And I use a hammer in my morals and ethics all the time because hammers are designed for a specific purpose, right? They're there to hammer nails into wood. Now, they do this very well, but they break windows very well too. Does that mean that they're good, that they're supposed to break windows? No. What's the right use for a hammer? It's to hammer nails into wood. So when it's doing that, we call its purpose good or right. And the Stoics believed that people were the same way. If I understand what I'm created to do, I do what's right. And that's when you come to your full power. You understand what you're supposed to do and you follow that. And that's what you do. And that's what Marcus Aurelius was saying. And that's what Seneca was saying too. Seneca was he was a teacher to one of the more poor emperors of Rome. He worked with Nero, and there was a time that Nero threw him out and banished him, and Seneca was really desolate, and he was isolated from his friends, his community, his family. And what did he do? He turned around and created a school on this remote island, which became a very influential philosophical school. And this is what Seneca was all about. Stoicism, and I'm not pushing Stoicism today, but I'm talking about leadership. It's about making the right decisions at the right time. Now, management is doing the work correctly, but leadership is doing the right work, and we have to be both. And Seneca's statement here, most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. Isn't that interesting? If I have control over myself, nothing can influence me. That was what he was inferring here. And his other sentence, the first sentence, is almost more interesting. Once you look at that second sentence, you go back to the first one, you say, only time can heal what reason cannot. I cannot use my logic and analysis to understand the world. Sometimes I can just let time progress. And if I control my own behavior, I know what I need to do, that's the best thing I can do. And that's power. Again, I'm not talking about going into the VP's office and saying, you have to do this. This is required. I'm talking about being able to sit in a room and be very quiet and listen and to be attentive and provide provocative ideas and interesting topics and negotiate and negotiate and negotiate and negotiate. There's different ways you can do this. If you know something is very right on your project, one of the greatest negotiating tools is to repeat it every single day. One of my mentors taught me this. He said, Tim, if this is the way it has to be done, this is the way it has to be done. And he would put it in all of his PowerPoint presentations. He would put it in his top 3 bullets in his dashboard until he walked down the hallway and everybody looking at him said, oh, here comes that project manager. He's going to talk to me about this topic. And it wasn't that he would wear people down with his logic or his resoluteness. It's that they understood there was something about this that he stood behind. And he wouldn't make the people wrong, and he wouldn't make people feel bad. So sooner or later, with time, this mentor of mine would always be able to negotiate. Maybe not win the negotiation, but he would be able to be given a table at the negotiation seat. He understood human behavior and he understood power. Again, we're looking at power and authority and how it can work for us. And look at this. Both Marcus Aurelius and Seneca are saying, don't focus your power on others. Focus it where you can make a difference on yourself. Now, let's go on. I chose 2 mentors today. One of them was an author, Stephen Covey, and he is the author of 7 Habits of Very Successful People, right? It's not a popular book right now, but it has been popular in the past, and people still talk about it. He did what a lot of business and leadership authors are doing today. He'd do surveys and analysis and interviews and look at patterns and see if he could find, what made influential people influential, what made powerful people powerful. And he came up with the 7 basic habits that, very successful business people usually had. Now, this is his statement about power. Every human has 4 endowments: self-awareness, conscious, independent will, and creative imagination. These gives us the ultimate human freedom. The power to choose, to respond, and to change. To change sounds like our experts, doesn't it? That sounds like we have the ability to go in and not necessarily change the problems, but change our perspective of it. Respond. We don't have to be upset or angry. We can do that, and we can choose. And if we don't like our choice, we can re-choose. Now, what's interesting is he didn't say these are given to us. What he said are given to us the foundations within which these are built. Freedom is built on self-awareness, conscience, independent will, and creative imagination. So that's part of what a human being is naturally. And power comes from that. And if you talk about the hammer and you talk about human beings, I bet Stephen Covey, and he does, I've looked into this, I bet Stephen Covey has a few words to say about the right use of self-aware, conscious, independent will and creative imagination, and wrong, just like a hammer is right or wrong. So Stephen Covey actually aligns with our experts, and he's actually taken me through very many lonely, long nights when I was struggling and I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. And that's why I look to him as a mentor. Peter Drucker is my other mentor model, and he is a wonderful mentor to have. Now, I have mentors that I talk to on the phone and I send emails to, and they contact back with me. A couple of them have been mentors of mine since about 2001, 2002, and our relationships always change. I'm not talking about an expert. I'm not talking about people that give me wisdom. I'm not talking about a coach, somebody who helps me build a skill. All of these people are important. I'm talking about a mentor, somebody who is investing in us through their time and their engagement. They're interested in us as we are interested in them, and we're building a relationship. Mentorship is based on relationship. And that's what Peter Drucker is. He's a mentor to me. I pick up a book, I read it, and then I have a bunch of questions, right? The questions, though, lead me to, what am I supposed to be doing with this? Or how does this solve my problem? And the comment that I had about power and authority from Peter Drucker today is a little bit different from what these three other fellows are talking about. Rank does not confer privilege or give power. Well, that's similar, isn't it? Yeah, we've been saying that. Power and authority are different, right? It imposes responsibility. You can consider rank as level, who reports into whom, who reports to you and who do you report to, right? And you can also think of rank as level of decision making. You go into a hierarchical chart inside of a company. And here are the people who make $1,000 decisions. Here are the people that make $10,000 decisions and $1 million decisions and $10 million decisions. And you can see them. And that's what the rank is. They are responsible for those decisions they make. Rank imposes responsibility. We bring power. Now, let's talk about that word privilege. I'm going to spend about 3 or 4 minutes on privilege. It's a very interesting word. I could probably write an entire presentation on this. Jim Collins had the habit of saying, you deserve a styrofoam cup. The old styrofoam coffee cups. Okay, he actually worked with an executive who was high in the government, and this executive told him at one point, he went to a conference and somebody carried his bags for him, and he always had a China cup with coffee in it, fixed exactly the way he wanted it, and then he actually stepped down from his position. Somebody else took over, and he went to the conference the very next year, and all of a sudden nobody was taking his bag and he was getting his cup of coffee himself, and it was in styrofoam. Okay, now he realized at this point, and Jim Collins made a note of this. In which book is it? Good to Great. If you're interested, read Jim Collins' Good to Great. He talks about this. He made a note of this, and all of a sudden he realized people carrying bags and people giving you China cups are not doing it for you. They're doing it for the position you have. And that's what Peter Drucker is saying. Privilege doesn't come from rank. Privilege is private law. It's the law I have and I get to follow. prive, which is private in Latin, and lege, which is law. Now, you don't get privilege because of your rank. It's the seat, it's the chair you sit in. It's privileged. You are not. A CEO, the person doesn't have privilege. The chair of the CEO does. The role of the CEO does. And as a project manager, we must remember this. You know, we have power, we have the ability to influence, but the privilege comes from the role. And once the role is done, we do not have the privilege. We are human beings, just like Marcus Aurelius and all the others and everybody else in the company. Human beings do not have privilege. It's the positions they hold. So what is this painting a picture of? It's very interesting. Power and authority are very useful. And power and authority also are defined in a similar way. We go back to our definition that we found in the PMBOK, and this is what they've been writing. All that the experts do is give us context on how to apply the power, right? How do we apply the power? We apply it to ourselves. And where does it reside? It resides on a foundation of what's good, and it comes from who we are and how we influence. And that's it. Now, here is the problem. And I have a call to action for you too. This may not be solvable by you, me, or all of us together. But once you start understanding this problem, we start thinking about what we could do and might do. Peter Drucker, in Managing Oneself, said that, you know what, 21st century is coming up, and this was back in the 1980s and 1990s, and he said, just like many other business experts were saying, life is going to be different. Work is going to be different. You cannot work the way you do. Jobs have to change. People have to change. Education have to change. And he said that we have to transition from skilled workers to workers of knowledge. Okay? And this was one of his famous statements from Managing Oneself. Companies today aren't managing careers. How many people have corporations that send them to training? How many people have work that you're being given? You know, this is the big issue we have today. And a project manager is even more impacted by us. It's really concerning. Here you are, you get to be a manager, right? Project manager, you're responsible for these people, you're responsible for this work. It may be $5,000, it may be $10 million, and nobody tells you how to do it. Here's Peter Drucker saying, we must be our own chief executive officer. In other parts of other books, he says that we learn being a leader by teaching ourselves first. And we make a lot of mistakes. He's very famous for saying, you know, a third of the decisions that an executive makes are going to be bad. A third of the decisions an executive makes are going to be inconsequential. It doesn't matter whether they made it or not. And only a third of the decisions that an executive makes are good decisions. Now, this is Peter Drucker, acknowledged to be one of the greatest experts and consultants to the most successful executives of business of the 20th century. And he's saying things like this. We must each be our own executive officer. We must teach ourselves. Well, here's the problem. We don't know where to start. We don't know what books to look at, and we don't know what an executive is. It's like going around in the dark with our eyes closed. How do we learn to do something we don't? And being a leader, I said earlier in this presentation, isn't something that you can just look in a book and do, right? It's like riding a bike. You can't read a book and ride a bike well. You have to fall down a few times and you have to balance. And so there's this concept of mentorship that keeps on coming up. Connecting to people who are further down the path and building a relationship such that you can continue to ask questions, struggle with issues and dilemmas, and find a better way to do it every day. You hear a lot of times that making a mistake isn't bad, but we're afraid to make mistakes. See, managers cannot make mistakes. Leaders know that mistakes are opportunities for innovation. So with our own career paths and our own direction, we must embrace our mistakes and be honest with ourselves and others so that others can learn from us. But at the same time, we can actually pursue this in a scientific, well-documented, continuous growth manner. And this is what they have been saying for the last 6,000 years in Western civilization and in other parts of the world. The oral traditions go even further back. This is how you impart leadership, not through reading a book, but by staying together and sharing the successes and failures and trying and moving forward in a concerted manner. That's what we mean by just getting in there and manage something. And a lot of my people who come through, my students, my attendees who come through the classes ask this. They say, Tim, how am I going to become a leader? I say, well, let's continue to talk about it. When they're not satisfied with that, they say, okay, I say, okay, you have a unique situation. Other people don't have the freedom you have. You have a project, right? Yes. What is a project? It's an isolated business. Now, I'm not condoning, devious experiments, but in some ways, a project is like a little petri dish inside of a business or a company, and it allows you to work inside of a contained environment so that you can actually learn and grow with your teams. I would recommend that you be very honest if you do this, both with yourself and the people you're working with. It's very funny. Once that you step up in your first kickoff meeting in a project and you say, guys, I don't know everything. You're going to teach me on this project as much as I'm going to teach you, but we're going to get through this together. And it's amazing. First of all, it takes a lot of things off your shoulders. Second of all, being authentic and realistic is actually a signal for other people to recognize you as a leader. And with that entry point, you have a small contained environment within which you can explore and discuss and decide which works and which doesn't. Isn't that brilliant? Okay, so we have a lot of links to some books that I've referenced here, and there's a lot of other material here. One thought I do want to lead you with, okay? Staying in connection, creating a relationship is one thing that all of these experts and mentors have agreed on. The other thing is, you don't need to change the world. Maybe all you need to do is change yourself. And if you learn and grow perhaps your perspective will grow with that as well. Okay, and that's what I have for you today. I will open up the floor for questions and comments. I do want to add an addendum to this, okay? Let's see here. I do want to add an addendum to this. The PMBOK was changed in 2017. And in 2015, PMI said, project managers globally, you're going to have to double down on your education in management and leadership as well as your understanding of business. And we're seeing this in the education world, where the material from PMI and the support from PMI, as well as the material coming out, is talking more and more about business and management. And so this is actually pointing the direction where PMI expects us to go, which is, again, in line with one of our mentors, Peter Drucker. Keep that in mind as you are progressing as a manager and leader. I think we have a lot to say and a lot to learn, all of us, in the next 20 years here. Okay, that's what I have. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions on the topics, or do you have any questions on the PMP exam, or any topics on project management? If you don't, I have a lot of questions that my students always ask when we talk about this, and I'm more than happy to talk about them. Let's start with a question. I'm going to put this in Notepad because it helps me think, and it helps me put my thoughts together when I write. I do this all the time when I'm putting together material or I'm writing, okay? Let's see here. A lot of the students going through my class say, all this is well and good, Tim, but I'm not given power or authority to do my project management role well, right? You know, how dare you, Tim, talk about these wonderful, lofty things about project management, and yet I don't feel like I can manage or lead. How do I do this, right? How do I go about getting or becoming a better leader without being a better leader? I'm afraid, right? Like I said, I think I've answered most of this question, right? Start off inside your project. Start off with small tactical actions that you can do today. Okay, have a kickoff meeting. Have a daily stand-up meeting, 15 minutes. Talk about status, talk about progress, talk about forecasts, and don't make the decisions for people. This is the interesting thing. There's two things that you can actually see, and this is a Peter Drucker, okay? In order to spot the leader, number one, they ask all the questions. Okay, that's what a leader does. They don't tell people what to do. They ask people what to do. See what happens. Two, they speak last. I'm teaching a negotiation class tomorrow. And in negotiation, there's something called a pause for consideration. When somebody is trying to negotiate with you and they're pushing you to a decision, they're trying to have you make a decision without thinking about it. If you sit back and you just wait and wait and wait, you don't have to think about anything. It disorganizes people, especially people from the US. If you're negotiating with somebody from the US, create a lot of pauses in the negotiation. Okay, I know this is horrible to say, but it works really well. Okay, this is what I mean by trying these little experiments. Watch how people behave in things like negotiation, and we negotiate all day, right? If two people have different points of view, what do? They negotiate to see which one's better, right? Become an observer, right? Went out to dinner with a group. Who's talking and who's observing, right? When you're going shopping, who's looking around at the crowds and who's actually hustling through and thinking about what they need to buy? This is one way you can spot leaders. Okay. I'll wait for some more questions. If you do have some questions, I would love to hear from you. But if you don't have questions, I still have some others that all of my students tend to ask. For instance, I have trouble getting my team to consensus. Consensus means we all agree. And there's some decisions we have to make where everybody has to agree. And they have to agree now. How do you do that? There's two methods here. One, find one topic everyone can agree on. What flavor of ice cream does everybody like? What time is dinner tonight? Find something that everybody has in common. See, when you have people with different ideas, you basically have two groups. And what you have to do is figure out a way to get them into one. And the only way you're going to do that is find something that's relatable or something that provides a context for the larger single group. And it doesn't matter what. We all do not like to stay overtime, right? We all want to get home to have dinner with our family. We all like vanilla ice cream, maybe, but it's a joining and it's a connection. And you can actually imagine this in your head. When you have people that it's, especially when you have things that are highly contentious, it's almost as if they're staring at each other across from the table. And it's not your job to stop that. It's your job to find that one common topic that's going to allow them to move slowly to the same side of the table. And when they're on the same side of the table, then you can start introducing topics. Okay, that's one way. Another way to do this is called disagree and commit. Okay? Now, this is identifying the true source of the issue. And we all have people on our teams like this. It's not a person. People are never the source of issues. An issue is something that keeps the project from progressing. Okay? People are not issues, they cause them. And we don't resolve people, we resolve issues, right? That's what a leader does. That's what a manager does too. Now, the key is you're asking them in a group saying, we appreciate your contribution. You're giving us another perspective that's incredibly valuable, and we've captured it right here. However, your disagreement is the issue. The fact that you are bringing this up is keeping us from moving toward our objective. Can I have you on record to disagree with the outcome, yet support the team 100%? Okay, it's called disagree and commit. Isn't that wonderful? All of a sudden, you've done this not just for the person who's the standout, but everybody else understands. The team and having a cohesive team is more important than the outcome. What does that speak to you as a leader? What does that speak to the group? That's a powerful statement you've just made right there. I'm not asking you to do this, guys. I'm just giving this as a concept. And I roll these out to my students all the time. And these are the topics we never have time to talk about when we're going through project management training and PMP exam preparation. So I really appreciate your attendance to these webinars, and I really appreciate the time you invest stepping out of your work days and participating in these non-work discussions where we have these incredibly complex scenarios like leadership and management that we can't talk about every day, but are critical for us to practice and share. Okay, do we have any further questions? Okay, I am not receiving any questions. Let's see here. Okay. Well, we still have a few minutes, but I don't want to waste your time. I want to thank you all for your participation here, and please look us up. We are going to be having a class coming up for more webinars and for more more classes. If you're interested, you can always talk to us. Let's see where we can go. It's Ijona Academy, right? There we go. Come on out, enjoy us, and we'll continue our discussion here. Yeah, and please ask questions, and please interact with us. Again, I'd love to have you as part of our classes, but if you just have questions or comments, we would appreciate that as well. Okay, thanks again.